This is from the Morning Star. US Democrats withdrawal letter calling for Ukraine war diplomacy. Peace activists have slammed the withdrawal of a letter calling for the White House to find a diplomatic solution to the war in Ukraine. 30 members of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, of which the Squad are a part, had faced protests over its support for the war, wrote a letter to President Joe Biden urging him to step up efforts to find a peaceful solution. That letter, they've withdrawn that, and they have been receiving quite a bit of flack for doing so. It's a little bit like the situation we had in the Labour Party with the Socialist Campaign Group withdrawing their signatures from the Stop the War letter. And joining us to talk about this is Chris Williamson. How are you doing, Chris?
Yeah, morning, Crispin. Very well, thank you.
Sorry to keep you waiting
That's okay.
For a bit. Now, I was a bit taken aback that they're getting a lot of flack. The Squad, some of them are going to public meetings and just being heckled all the time for supporting the war effectively and supporting arming Ukraine. Do you think the Democrat Party is going through the same crisis as the Labour Party, or has it gone through that before? Do you think those people were never radical, or what's your view on the Squad, as they're called?
Oh, I think there are real parallels between the Labour Party and the Democrats, no doubt about that, in my opinion. And as for the Squad, I mean, I think they've been labelled now the fraud squad. I think that really sums them up, frankly, because, you know, they get elected on a platform of supporting, you know, progressive radical change. Many of them even claim to be socialist, and then we find them sort of voting along with the establishment and supporting this proxy war in Ukraine. It's absolutely outrageous. And there is a clear parallel, isn't there, as you were saying there, Crispin, between the Socialist Campaign Group in this country, who signed a fairly tame, in my opinion, moderate Stop the War statement about the war in Ukraine. And like the Democrats, within 24 hours, all their names have been removed from it. It's totally unacceptable. Frankly, the Democrats are not fit for purpose as a vehicle for progressive change in the United States, just as the Labour Party are not a vehicle for progressive change in this country. There's a movement towards a third party being established in the United States now, because people are fed up of it. I mean, even people like Bernie Sanders, who, you know, so much hope invested in him, is just another establishment tool. And regrettably, that's what we seem to be finding in this country as well with the Socialist Campaign Group. You know, there's not a super like the fraud squad, but I mean, you know, if there was one, then the Socialist Campaign Group would deserve it, just as the so-called squad in the US do.
So what are you saying about Bernie Sanders? I mean, he's really been, as they call it, some kind of poster boy for the left in America, and we were all so excited. A lot of people in this country would be excited about him. What's he doing that makes you think he's not that person that we all?
Well, he's completely sold out, as the rest of the fraud squad have done. He's voted along with the squad for billions of dollars to prolong the war, this proxy war in Ukraine, rather than pushing for diplomatic alternatives. But not worse than that, but in addition to that, certainly not worse than that, but certainly in addition to that, not using their power, which they have, to push for things like a minimum wage of I think $15. I think they were campaigning on Medicare for all. You know, they've all kind of capitulated on all these key issues. But what is completely unforgivable, in my opinion, is that they stood on a platform of campaigning for that. And there was a real effort, as you may have seen, people like Jimmy Dore were running a campaign to force the vote on the floor of the House in the States to get Medicare, or at least get a vote on Medicare for all. And what they were saying was that the squad had the power to say, look, we're not going to support Nancy Pelosi as Speaker of the House unless you guarantee a vote on Medicare for all. Now, they were realistic enough to recognize that maybe they might not get that through, but there was a possibility that they could have got it through. But it would have exposed all of those frauds who, if they didn't vote for Medicare for all, voted it down. Even though they've been campaigning on it, they would be utterly exposed. And that would make them vulnerable, I think, to the primary process, the sort of process that I was hoping that we could try and introduce or a version of it, for the Labour Party with the Democracy Roadshow, when it was going around the country trying to make, Labour MPs accountable to their members. But that would have made them vulnerable to that, and they capitulated on that, and there was no vote. So, all what was said about a minimum wage, about Medicare for all, their support allegedly for it, their alleged opposition to war, it's just for the birds. They're a bunch of liars and frauds. And then the only thing they're really concerned about, just as I found in my experience with Labour MPs, is their career and furthering their career and making sure they're getting a nice fat salary and pension rights and book deals potentially when they leave public life, and lucrative positions in non-executive directorships and all the rest of it. And the real parallels between both the US and Britain. And that's why I think it's so crucial that we do expose them. And it's great to see people like Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez being actually called out in the town hall meetings. Ilhan Omar being called out. I mean, Ilhan Omar.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'll just play a clip of. I've just got a clip of Ilhan Omar being called out in a meeting.
Good.
I'm just going to play it now.
You are supposed to be a progressive Democrat, anti-war. Anti-war. 80 billion to Ukraine is not anti-war.
We are helping Ukraine defend themselves.
Ukraine is killing its own citizens.
Helping people
in the Donbass.
War. We are helping little children like me that have been helped. So unless you have not been paying attention to what is happening, there are millions of Ukrainians that have been displaced. There are piles of bodies that are being found in mass graves. There are little children whose lives are being lost.
By Zelensky!
Here.
Yeah, by Zelensky in the Donbass.
But unless you are someone like me that has been that child, you do not get to tell me what my votes mean and how I get to vote in supporting people who
Wow. I mean, that's massive gaslighting, isn't it? I mean, this
absolutely
the kind of gaslighting that we're used to in the Labour Party.
Very much so. I mean, she put a tweet out, Crispin, which I've got a copy of here, and she accused the people who were opposing war, opposing the continuation of the proxy war, opposing billions of dollars being given to Ukraine to prolong the war, although a lot of that's then being recycled back into the military-industrial complex in the US. But she said to that you are dangerous propagandists who are literally making a mockery of the anti-war movement. And then she sarcastically went on to say, I've never had the pleasure of responding to Russian ridiculous internet disinformation in person before. Thank you for the opportunity. And yet a few months before that, she put another tweet out before she was obviously got at, saying the consequences of flooding Ukraine with billions of dollars in weapons, American weapons, that is US weapons, likely not limited to just military specific equipment, but also including small arms and ammo, are unpredictable and likely disastrous, especially when they're given to paramilitary groups without accountability. Well, that's happening all the time. And yet, so what's happened? I mean, that she put that out, I think, in about April time. And then now she's saying this. I mean, she's no better than the right-wing war hawks. And we've got the same scenario, it seems to me, over in here in the UK, where there is a bipartisan support for this proxy war in Ukraine, rather than calling for efforts to be made to use diplomacy to bring about peace. All that can happen through continuing to flood Ukraine with billions of dollars for so-called lethal aid is just going to prolong the war. More Ukrainians, more Russian people are going to suffer, are going to be killed, are going to be horribly maimed and displaced, and it could potentially lead to a wider conflagration. I mean, and the potentiality even of a nuclear holocaust. I mean, this is crazy. I mean, why aren't Labour MPs speaking out about this? Why aren't the trade union movement speaking out? I mean, the TUC, for God's sake, passed a resolution calling for an increase in defence expenditure, so-called defence expenditure, weapons expenditure, because it protects jobs, and overturned a previous commitment to defence diversification. I mean, the Lucas aerospace workers were calling for that over 40 years ago. They demonstrated that they could use their skills for socially useful production. And they came up with a list of, I think, of about 150 socially useful products, including, this is in 1976, combined heat and power, hybrid vehicles, solar panels, wind turbines, all these kind of things. Lots of innovation. They were well ahead of the time. Of course, they were ignored. But that's what the trade union movement should be supporting. Now, there was a lot of opposition. It was only narrowly got through. But at the end of the day, that is now the official position of the TUC. What a joke! It's a sick joke, to say the least. So, we really do need to step up. There's a real job for us to do, it seems to me, and calling out these hypocrites in the Labour Party and building an alternative movement, but also calling out these hypocrites in the leadership of the trade union movement as well, because they're not representing us.
Yeah, well,
I mean,
I just wanted to add about the Democrats is that Barack Obama's been out speaking, and he's been heckled as well. And he's good at the gaslighting.
He dropped more bombs, let's remember, than George Bush did. I mean, the man's another war criminal.
The gaslighting is they're so good at this gaslighting, because what he did was they were all heckling him, and he said that this is not how we should conduct debate in the United States. We were better than this. We should not heckle people or whatever. It's like he's totally distracted from the point. There's so many ways they gaslight and distract people from what's going on, and that's something that we need in political education, isn't it? I mean, when you don't know what their tactics are and how they distract you.
It absolutely is. You're absolutely right, Crispin. We do need that political consciousness raising, but we're being badly betrayed, aren't we, by the so-called leadership of the Labour movement? Where are they in actually providing this political education? They're not doing it, and it's falling to grassroots activists, platforms like yours, to do that political education. But the trade union leadership should be doing that. Labour MPs should be out doing that. And they shouldn't be backing off. If they call themselves socialists, pro-peace campaigners, they certainly shouldn't be backing down from supporting a fairly modest stop the war statement calling for, basically, an end to the hostilities. And similarly, in the US with the Democrats, I mean, these people are just performative. I mean, they're not real. And as previously said, Crispin, that the overriding priority, it seems to me, by their actions, it's not just me just throwing rocks at these characters, by their actions demonstrates to me that the most important priority for these characters is their careers, is their salaries, is their pensions, is their book deals after coming out of the public life, and the potential positions on the boards of different companies as non-executive directors, etc. It's a scandal, and we need to be calling them out, just as they're doing in those town hall meetings. We should be doing the same, it seems to me, in this country, because they are a bunch of hypocrites. And the media, just as the media over there is all gagging for war, gunning for war, we've got to do it from the grassroots, and we've got to be, because we're in, it's right. I mean, Christ, these people are potentially going to destroy the world, literally.